In the vast, unforgiving silence of space, where the only certainty is isolation, even the strongest minds can break. Few stories embody this descent into madness more vividly than Mouthwashing, the indie psychological horror game that turns the cosmos into a personal hell. At the heart of this chilling tale is Captain Curly, a leader undone by sabotage, betrayal, and the unraveling of everything he thought he could control. This is the story of how one man's command became a nightmare, and how his survival became a question of unbearable consequence. Captain Curly begins the story as a seasoned commander of the Tulpar, a freighter spaceship tasked with interstellar deliveries. His crew, a mismatched group of flawed but relatable individuals, relies on his level-headed leadership to keep them safe. There's Jimmy, the ambitious but volatile co-pilot, Anya, the empathetic medic hiding secrets of her own, Swansea, the grizzled mechanic, and Daisuke, the bright-eyed intern with dreams bigger than his experience. On the surface, the Tulpar is a well-oiled machine. Beneath it, tensions simmer. Curly is thrust into a moral dilemma early on when Anya reveals a shocking truth. She's pregnant, and Jimmy is the father, but the circumstances surrounding it are troubling. Curly tries to maintain diplomacy, but his inability to take decisive action sows distrust. Then, in a fateful misstep, Curly warns the crew of impending layoffs due to budget cuts, an attempt at transparency that backfires spectacularly. The cracks in their unity are widening, but no one could predict the catastrophe waiting just ahead. Disaster strikes when sabotage causes the Tulpar to crash into an asteroid, the ship is left mangled, and its crew stranded in the middle of nowhere. Curly himself is gravely injured, paralyzed, voiceless, and confined to the medical bay. Once a commanding presence, he is now reduced to a helpless observer as the crew begins to fracture under the weight of despair. With Curly incapacitated, command falls to Jimmy, whose insecurities and paranoia make him ill-suited to lead. What follows is a slow but inevitable descent into chaos. The crew's fragile bonds unravel as resources dwindle, and isolation gnaws at their minds. Jimmy, overwhelmed by guilt and the crushing weight of responsibility, grows increasingly unstable. He begins to blame Curly for their predicament, rationing the captain's painkillers as an act of twisted revenge. Curly, left to endure excruciating pain, becomes a scapegoat for the crew's collective failures, a silent figure whose suffering casts a shadow over every decision they make. But Jimmy's torment isn't just external, it's psychological. The horrors aboard the Tulpar grow darker as his guilt manifests in vivid hallucinations. In one grotesque sequence, Jimmy envisions a nightmarish birthday party where the crew's corpses sit around a table, lifeless, yet eerily mocking. In the scene's climax, he imagines himself tearing into Curly's flesh, a ghastly act of cannibalism that reflects both his desperation and his fractured sense of reality. The lines between delusion and truth blur, leaving the player to wonder just how far gone Jimmy and the rest of the crew have fallen. Meanwhile, the other crew members fare no better. Intern Daisuke, once optimistic and eager, retreats into himself. And it all comes to a head when Jimmy convinces Daisuke to crawl through a damaged vent to bypass the lockdown. But the attempt turns disastrous. Daisuke suffers deep lacerations and burns from jagged metal in the vent. Despite efforts to save him, infection sets in, sealing his fate. In a heartbreaking act of mercy, the ship's mechanic, Swansea, uses a fire axe to end Daisuke's suffering, leaving the crew shaken and the tragedy etched into their memories. Swansea's death in Mouthwashing is a pivotal and emotional moment. After the harrowing decision to euthanize Daisuke, tensions between Swansea and Jimmy reach a boiling point. Consumed by guilt, anger, and alcohol, Swansea confronts Jimmy in a heated clash aboard the ship. Their argument spirals into violence, culminating in Jimmy fatally shooting Swansea with a revolver. In his final moments, Swansea delivers a scathing condemnation of Jimmy's cowardice and reflects on the crew's tragic downfall, leaving a haunting echo of regret as the scene fades. Anya, already grappling with her own demons, succumbs to an accidental overdose while trying to self-medicate. The Tulpar becomes a tomb, its halls filled with the echoes of shattered lives and dreams. As the crew crumbles, Jimmy makes one last desperate bid for redemption. In a rare moment of lucidity, he decides to preserve Curly's life by placing him in the ship's sole functioning cryopod, ensuring his survival for a potential rescue. Jimmy, burdened by guilt and the weight of his failures, leaves a final apology for Curly before taking his own life. His haunting words hang in the air as the Tulpar drifts aimlessly, a monument to despair. The game ends with Curly, the last surviving member of the Tulpar, entering a 20-year cryosleep. The image of his frozen, battered body is as haunting as it is ambiguous. Has Curly been saved or merely condemned to endure his suffering in silence for decades more? Mouthwashing leaves players with no easy answers, only the chilling reminder of how isolation and desperation can strip humanity down to its barest, most brutal core. Captain Curly's story is one of survival, but at what cost? His transformation from a steadfast leader to a helpless victim encapsulates the game's exploration of humanity under duress. The Tulpar's descent into madness, betrayal, and gruesome tragedy challenges players to confront the darkest corners of the human condition. What would you do if survival came at the expense of your soul? If you've played Mouthwashing, or have your own theories about the Tulpar's doomed journey, let us know in the comments below. And remember, in the silence of space, it's not the darkness that terrifies, it's what's waiting inside your own mind.